Hey everyone, this is Bennett Forrest, your fantasy football commish, here with the Week 4 ForrestLand MishMash Fantasy Football Weekly Recap. Of course, if you're paying attention, you know that I did not do a Week 3 recap, and I'm being a total slacker commissioner, and I have absolutely no excuse. All I can say is that I promise it's not because the Slim Aussies may have the worst team in the league this year. It has nothing to do with that. It all has to do with me being busy and um, just not doing it. So again, no excuse there. Hopefully I'm not as bad as Roger Goodell, the real life commissioner, and you'll give me some slack here. So let's dive right into week 3, which was missed. Let's just quickly talk about the whopping 255 points for the Chicago Travelers. They smoked the Stallions, even though the Stallions had a very respectable 153 points. Obviously, league MVP Aaron Rodgers is just unbelievably nasty. He had 5 touchdowns against Kansas City. Flacco's been up and down this year, if you can see. You've got your 0 points the first week, a couple good weeks, and then last week not so much at Pittsburgh. But this was one of Flacco's good weeks. You also have Frank Gore, who's also been up and down, and this is sort of his best week with 86 yards and 2 touchdowns. So we're not sure how much we're going to see out of Frank Gore the rest of the year. But great day. Obviously, Julio Jones and Aaron Rodgers are really the anchors of the Travelers team. Julio didn't do too much the other day. We'll get to week 4 in a minute. But when you have 3 different players scoring 40 points, you're going to win most games. Plus, Steve Smith, who is actually having a great year. I thought, he's finally going to be over the hill. After last year, he sort of faded down the stretch. But Steve Smith's having a great year, obviously with 46 points. And then when you get 2 pick sixes from your defense, that's going to help as well. So one of the probably best days ever. I don't know if I have the wherewithal to look it up to see if it's a record or anything, but obviously 255 points is smoking. So good job, the Travelers. Of course, like I mentioned, the Slim Aussies not scoring a lot of points this year. Graceland, until week 4, was still the only other undefeated team. She did get a tie in week 4. We'll get to that in a minute. The biggest thing I guess I should mention is the Calvinators, who are 0-4. Now this year they didn't do much this week and last week, but the first 2 weeks sort of had bad luck. So this is one of those combinations where you have a couple weeks of bad luck followed by a couple weeks of no scoring, and that leads you to an 0-4 record. So this is a classic case of the not as bad as the record shows. Obviously Tom Brady and Gronkowski got lots of points, just not enough points elsewhere in week 3. So the colon cleansers beat the Calvinators in week 3. A lot of high scoring. You also had Third and Oolong, defending champ, beating 2 years ago's champ, the Cartel, 175-122. And Ray Finkel is looking pretty good with 174 points. Even with Ryan Tannehill not being that great, got Odell Beckham and Joseph Randle and Adrian Peterson, who's looking like classic Adrian Peterson. So I just wanted to quickly go over week 3 before we get to week 4. Congratulations to Temi for getting a league high, season high, 255 points in week 3. Now let's move to last week, which was, of course, week 4. And you can see some double-digit point totals. Now, the sad part for the Slim Aussies, as I mentioned before, may be the worst team in the league. I got less points than the Calvinators, and the Calvinators had 2 bye players in the starting lineup. That's pathetic, at least for the Slim Aussies. So the Calvinators don't get the win and don't really deserve the win because, and this is the weird thing, I talked to team owner Greg Forrest the day before, and we talked about Tom Brady and Gronkowski being on byes. And I guess now that I'm looking a little closer, you can see sort of why. This is the downside of being a New England homer, because if you got 6 people on the Patriots, then there's going to be that one bye week where they don't play. Definitely could have put Derek Carr in for Tom Brady. Would have gotten more points, obviously. And, having Ryan Matthews or Ruben Randall or some other bench player at least to fill out the roster. So no excuse for the Calvinators. I don't know what happened. I saw them the day before. And they get the loss, and deservedly so. Ray Finkel doesn't do too much spectacular, but does enough to win. with a pretty respectable 141 points. One of the big ones, of course, was Adrian Peterson had that long touchdown run. So only 81 yards, but he had one that was like 40-something yards, so that obviously helps. So the Kicking Academy goes to 3-1 after losing week 1. They've now ripped off 3 in a row. Calvinators, as I mentioned before, 0-4. We'll look at the point totals in a minute to see how much of that is bad luck, but nevertheless, records 0-4. I already mentioned the Slim Aussies. I'll only mention it just for to point out that, again, scored less points than the Calvinators, and I had a full roster in there, and I'm just not getting any points. I have to say, obviously, DeMarco Murray, huge disappointment, first rounder. T.Y. Hilton, third rounder, huge disappointment. Peyton Manning is what he is. I'm not really too upset about Peyton Manning. He's old, but just nothing. Carlos Hyde, terrible, mostly due to San Francisco's offense being terrible. Matt Jones had one awesome week, picked him up off the waiver wire, doing nothing. And just nothing. Mike Evans, I thought was going to be big once Jameis Winston got his feet wet. He's not doing anything yet. Jimmy Graham, huge disappointment. So this whole is a big way of saying that the Slim Aussies just don't have a good team, and I'm not happy about that. I thought Jimmy Graham would be targeted a lot of short passes. I thought he'd be getting not a ton of yards, but 5-6 passes a game. You can see he's had a couple decent games, but he's had 2 just non-existent games, and that Seattle offense is just not doing what I thought they would do. So big disappointments all around for the Slim Aussies. 1-3, still a long way to go, so season's not over yet. Travelers followed up the 255 points with a nothing special 120, but they get the win. They'll take it any way they can get it. Less than half the points of the week before. And for the Slim Aussies, it just hurts even worse to know that between Julio Jones and Aaron Rodgers to get less than 30 points and yet still get their butts kicked is not a good sign. So the Travelers, 3-game winning streak, they're 3-1. Let's mention the tie. Let's look at the tie. So we have the Cartel and Graceland. Graceland, not a perfect season, but still has the chance to be undefeated. I guess the biggest thing is, did the game come to Monday night? So Calvin Johnson, 10 points. So there's the swing right there. Is they both got 141 points, but obviously 2 minutes left in the game, Monday night, last game of the week. Calvin Johnson gets a catch, fumbles at the end zone. Even if he doesn't fumble and just gets tackled at the 1, you get 2. You don't get the negative points. Cartel wins. Obviously, if he goes into the end zone, Cartel's going to win it as well. So talk about your tough luck loss right there. The Cartel literally lost it with about 2 minutes left Monday night. So real tough loss. If there was any justice in the fantasy world, the Cartel would have won, and they'd be 2-2 instead of 1-2-1. So that's just how it goes. So both respectable point totals, and they walk away with a tie, 141 each. Another close game. We had Third and Oolong going to 3-1, defeating Rawhide Super Mules. Let's see if that came down to Monday night. Let's see. We had Seattle and Detroit. So the Super Mules needed a couple more touchdowns from Russell Wilson Monday night. That would have helped. Even with the overtime touchdown from Drew Brees, not quite enough. Very respectable 151 points, just not quite enough for the win. Obviously Russell Wilson needed to do a little bit more Monday night. And then Third and Oolong with a very respectable Matt Ryan, Cam Newton, Jamal Charles, just real steady. Now, and DeAndre Hopkins, who I mentioned in an earlier post, definitely the receiver you want on Houston. Obviously, Andre Johnson's gone anyway, but he's nasty. And with 2 crappy quarterbacks, he's still putting up tons of numbers. So DeAndre Hopkins, classic case of a crappy team, good fantasy player, and that really helps Third and Oolong. And then Allen Hurns, I'll be honest, I've never heard of this guy. Hurns is quietly leading the Jaguars in receptions, and he's had a couple good games here. So not sure if she drafted Allen Hurns or picked him up off the waiver wire, but that could be a sneaky good pick if he, again, just like DeAndre Hopkins, if he's the one good guy on a crappy team, that's all that matters in fantasy is that he gets statistics. So good job, third and Oolong, 3-1. Tough late loss for their Super Mules. We also, let's see, I mentioned Finkel, I mentioned the tie. And then we have the Stallions beating the Colon Cleanser, 134-118. Good job picking up Michael Vick for 12 points with Roethlisberger out. Definitely could have had more points, but you do what you can, and you put the starter in. And some nice production from the running backs, wide receivers here, and the Colon Cleansers. Just not quite enough to get it done against the Stallions. So let's take a look at the standings. And 4 weeks in, we're actually a third of the season. Graceland clearly the team to beat. Although the Travelers, with that 255 points, they have the overall point lead. But a third of that was in one game. So overall, I would say Graceland's got the most consistent team. And as you can tell, the Slimazis clearly scoring the fewest points. Sort of lucky to have one win. And then last year's champ, third in Oolong with second most points in the league. Ray Finkel's got a lot of points too. So, and then of course there's always got to be a couple tough luck losers. You have the Colon Cleansers and the Rawhide Super Mules with a ton of points, no wins, and Calvinators, as we mentioned, 0-4. So, still plenty of time left in the season. Again, sorry for being a slacker, Commissioner. I will do my best to get an update every week. And as always, good luck. For those of you who haven't paid me, get me your money. And good luck. Don't forget your Thursday night games and your bye weeks. Signing off. Have a great weekend, guys.